Is this working? Is it working all right? Welcome to the first regular panel after the ambassadors. I'm John Roberts. I'm not going to bother to make any further introductory remarks. We've got 6 speakers. I'm hoping that they're all going to manage somehow to condense their remarks. And we'll be starting with Slavko Nekov, talking from Bulgarian perspective. And over to you, Slavko.
Thank you very much, John. As I warned you, I know you're very disappointed, but I have no PowerPoint presentation. So I just have 4 messages which I want to pass you in the context of the topic we're going to discuss now, which is linked to energy security. Well, my first message is related to my understanding that when it comes to energy security from the point of view of security of supply, Europe does not have any problems currently. We succeeded to go through very tough times, not only in relation to Russian gas a couple of years ago, but also through the electricity prices. I think that, however, from the point of view of energy security, we have a much tougher problem to face. And it was touched more or less delicately by the previous speakers. This is the relation between the European energy security and European competitiveness, particularly when it comes to technologies. Because there, as we all know, technology-wise, Europe is very, very dependent on, particularly on China, and this comes as a problem if you look at the issue of batteries, if we look at the issue of cars, electric cars, if we look at the issue of electrolyzers and photovoltaics, etc. My second message is related to the Green Deal, and I want to put this very much into the political perspective from point of view of the outcome of the recent European Parliament elections. Maybe you know that the Greens, the Green supporters, if I may say so, lost 50 seats, 50 seats in the European Parliament. And the question is, what will be the outcome of this? What will be the result of this, also from perspective of the energy security? My personal understanding is that the Green Deal is moving forward very actively, despite the political decisions, and this is thanks mostly to the business. However, the political decisions will be of huge importance in the future. That is, I don't think that there will be a revision of the legislation which has been already adopted at EU level when it comes to the role of renewables and in the context of the Green Deal in general, because it does not concern only energy. But when it comes to the adoption of new legislation and when it comes to the next steps which are not yet implemented, there might be a very substantial change at European level, and this will certainly also influence very much the national level decisions. My third message is that there is a very strong necessity at European level of a refocus. And in this context, I would put 3 practical issues. For one of them, we shall talk in more details tomorrow. This is the attitude towards nuclear. There's a session tomorrow on that. But from point of view of the general frame, the necessity of refocusing when it comes to energy security, in my view, is related also very much to particular focus on networks development and also on the new new trend. I will use a relatively new term which is used. This is the so-called energy democracy, which means the more and more involvement of the citizens in the process of support of the Green Deal reforms. It is really a great honor from this point of view to make reference to Greece. Let me tell you that last year in October 2023, a special report was issued. It's public, it's on the web, about the energy communities in Greece. Greece is a country which will follow what it is doing in this aspect, because in a lot of countries there is some legislation in place, but in practical terms, the key developments in the region in this direction are in Greece, with its more than 1,670 energy communities in place, which have a lot of both positive and negative experience. So this is in kind of a general European frame. My last message is related to Southeastern Europe. I think that in this context, I need to start with a citation of the brilliant background paper, which the previous moderator referred to, about the energy developments in South and Eastern Europe. And I just want to recall one sentence, which when I read, I didn't know whether to laugh or whether to cry. The sentence is related to, I'm quoting, EU bureaucratic thinking, which appears to be completely out from the harsh economic reality. End of quote. So I think that this is really something of particular importance, bringing much more realism of what is going on in Europe, and particularly in Southeastern Europe, when it comes to the energy changes. And just to give you an extra argument for the necessity of this thinking, there was a lot of issues touched upon within the previous panels related to gas. 3 days ago, Financial Times published an article according to which Russia still delivers about 15% of the gas to the European Union, and also to some countries from the region like Serbia, North Macedonia, and some others. And it has, in fact, jumped beyond the efforts of the United States to be a player in this context. Of course, this is a picture from May 2024, but it is a picture which has to be taken on board. And from this point of view, I will finish, Chairman, with a kind of a political reference about Southeastern Europe. It's really, I'm really sorry that Mr. Olorkowski has left. But I think that the focus on the enlargement of the EU towards the Western Balkans should continue to be at the highest of the political agenda. And I'm very glad to note that in the Hungarian EU presidency priorities, the Hungarian presidency starts on 1st of July, this issue has been brought on the agenda again. However, there is one statement there that which also links the issue to the absorption possibility of the EU, that is the capacity to enlarge. In this context, I just want to say that there is also not only enlargement fatigue, but also expectation fatigue, because some of the countries from the region have been doing miracles when it comes, for example, to the energy-related reforms, but still the political process of enlargement seems to be kind of more on the theory than on the practical side. And this has to be changed, particularly now when Moldova and Ukraine received a very strong boost for joining the EU. And I'm not talking about Moldova, but for Ukraine, this is definitely a political decision, which could be hardly motivated with the criteria for the EU enlargement. I will stop here. Once again, I think that the energy sector of the region and in Europe in general is in a pretty good shape, but we should get rid of the, I'm quoting again, the bureaucratic thinking. Thank you very much for your attention, Chair.
Slavcho, thank you very much indeed. I'm particularly, I think all of us felt that about getting rid of bureaucratic thinking. I don't know how we do that, though, given that we have been developing our bureaucracies, in some cases for millennia. If anybody can find a way to, what was that old communist ideal, the abolition of government? I mean, you know, if anyone can work that out, please, please, please let us all know. Right. Our next speaker is Bill Gillett, who's been working for the European Academy's Science Advisory Council, who has been working on energy security there. So, Bill, over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you very much also to IENE and to Costis for inviting me here today. I feel very honored to be here, and it's a great privilege for me to join you. When you talk about the problems of bureaucracy, the fact that I was a civil servant in Brussels for 14 years makes me wonder whether I've come at the right point in this meeting. I would like to just share a few thoughts with you and explain maybe why I'm here. Costas is working with us. He was appointed by the Academy of Athens to join our working group on the security of sustainable energy supplies. As you can see, we've produced a number of reports. These are produced by the 29 national science academies from the European Union countries, Norway, Switzerland, and the UK, as well as the other two networks, ALIA and Academia Europaea. Our mission is to provide independent science-based advice to EU policymakers in the Commission, Parliament, and the Member States. We have 3 programs, and I'm responsible for the energy one. We work inside and outside the EU, so I'm very excited to be here with the southeastern countries which are not within the EU, because we also work with Africa, with Asia, and with the Americas, and we are discussing how we could do more with the neighboring countries in the southeast. So that would be something that I would like to follow up on. In terms of our thinking on European energy policy, there are 3 totally interlinked areas of policy as we see it. That's the security of energy supplies, the sustainability, and the affordability. These have to go together. And I think there was a mention earlier of Repower EU, which was the European response to the Russian invasion. This has led to an increase in the renewables target, a desire to get ourselves free of fossil fuels from Russia, and very importantly, energy efficiency or energy savings targets. And making this work is something which, at the end of the day, comes down to each of us, to our industries, to our businesses, as well as to our bureaucracies. So I'm going to share with you a few of the things that we've said to policymakers. On the buildings area that was touched upon earlier this afternoon, we have a few signals which are very similar to what I think have been given already this afternoon. One of the things that upset a few people, particularly in Germany, was our emphasis on banning gas boilers. The driver behind that is the leakage of methane, which is 80 times worse than CO2 for global warming. And we've got 65 million gas boilers burning this stuff. And whilst we would love to renovate all our buildings and reduce the amount of energy consumed in buildings, our recommendation was to triple the renovation rates. That's not cheap. And one of the ways that you can get your emissions down from buildings is to replace the gas boiler with a heat pump or district heating where that's feasible. We also had a report on motorized transport, 3 ways to do something about your transport emissions. First of all, get on your bike, walk, avoid motorized transport. Secondly, use buses or trains or trams or ships. And the third is to improve the technology. And it's interesting to see, as I came through from the airport this afternoon, the electric buses here in Thessaloniki beginning to take a role in the business. Be interesting to see how the electric cars are going also here. We had a bit of a big debate about the hydrogen agenda. It's very clear to us that it's not going to be cheap. You've only got to look at fundamental thermodynamics to see that, because basically it's a very inefficient process. So it should be prioritized for hard to electrify applications. And rather like we saw, I think last week, that we must now monitor the natural gas and the methane coming into Europe because of the leakages and the losses where natural gas is extracted from the ground. So we also have to worry about the leaks of hydrogen. Its global warming potential is not as bad as methane, but it's still much worse than CO2. And there has been a push by the gas industry to say we ought to be blending hydrogen with natural gas. Well, we emphasize very strongly that a blend of 10%, I think if you talk to the transmission operators, they'll say 10 or 12% is the maximum you could imagine getting into the networks. You save your greenhouse gas emissions by about 1% by doing that. So it's hardly worth the cost. We also have a strong message on bioenergy. We've been working on that for a long time, and we're consistent with the European Union's forestry strategy. Please don't burn whole trees. There's a cascade recommended, which the Commission has been promoting and which the scientists have endorsed. Use the wood in long-term, long-lasting applications first. So some of the wood in this building will still be here in 100 years. Let's keep the carbon on the ground. Then you extend the life of wood products, and you go down through recycling, and the last thing you do is burn it. You shouldn't do as our dear British people in Drax do, which is to import it from the United States and stick it straight into a power station to burn to produce electricity. We've been very clear that that's not clever for the environment. We're worried about energy poverty. And the polluter pays principle works in a sense in that it puts up the price, so it stops people buying as much energy, but it does hit the most vulnerable groups the hardest. And that's why it's so important that we have proper use in the countries of the Social Climate Fund. It means that we don't give everybody the same amount of money. And I know in some of the parts of this part of the world, that's a cultural problem because you think you should give everybody the same amount of money. But we do need to help the vulnerable groups and households, and we don't need to help some people. So they need help with getting investments and they need help with paying their energy bills. So our team, including Costas, is working on energy security, the security of sustainable energy supplies. We don't have our conclusions yet. We can see that there are quite a lot of definitions, and availability at an affordable price is clearly a key one. There are some serious concerns about the currently volatile geopolitics and the cyber dimension, which is really important now, especially as we see increasing amounts of artificial intelligence in the electricity supply networks. And then the phasing out of fossil fuels, a major need to work on the infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, because there will be a lot more electricity in the future. And of course, the need to create the jobs in Europe to produce our products here. I'm nearly finished. I just want to flag some energy security benefits, which I haven't heard discussed this afternoon yet. We reduce our dependence on imports. We potentially lower the level of conflict in international markets. We reduce the risks of major energy supply interruptions because renewables and sustainable energy sources are typically more distributed, so they're less vulnerable. We reduce the risks of extreme weather damage, which is very expensive, and we empower citizens and engage with them. And last but certainly not least, it provides investment opportunities, green jobs, and as we've seen, lower energy costs. So my last slide says, we need to worry, as I said at the beginning, about sustainability. And here, European Union has a global leadership role, which we should maintain, work with others together to phase out the fossil fuels as soon as we can, because of the benefits this will bring. Address the affordability, prioritize the lowest cost, most efficient options, but communicate and engage with our citizens and our businesses, support the strategic industries and vulnerable groups that we need. And then for the energy security, maximize the benefits, invest in energy efficiency, energy efficiency, energy efficiency, renewables, infrastructure, and protecting ourselves from cyber and malicious attacks. And the last thing I would say, coming from the Academy's network, of course, is that if we want investor confidence, it's quite encouraging to see that they're increasingly believing in scientists, and science or evidence-based policies can help to boost investor confidence. Thank you very much.
Bill, thank you very much. Thank you for a comprehensive approach, and indeed for one of the best and most simple definitions of energy security that I've heard. And I can remember at one point going through something like 50 different definitions of energy security. There just is no consensus on what it is. I'm hoping that we've got Gina Gusilov online. Can the technicians tell me if Eugenia Gusilov is online from Bucharest? Okay? Yep. Thank you. Gina, over to you, and thank you for being here, as it were, virtually.
Hello, and let me start by greeting you, our chairman, all my co-panelists, Aiene, of course, and Mr. Kostis Stambolis. Thank you for the invitation, as always. I will probably have a short intervention this time, mostly giving you some points in terms of a view from Romania on some of the things that are happening in our region, specifically how things are discussed and the topics that I find interesting here, inside Romania and around us. So the first observation would be that we see Romania's electricity consumption decrease. This is something that a little bit caught everyone by surprise, in the sense that no one expected this to happen so soon, specifically decrease of electricity consumption delivered through the grid. A part, of course, is to blame for this situation is the phenomenal advance of prosumers, which have reached close to 1,400 megawatts, so the equivalent of our 2 reactors installed at Chernavode, so 1.4 gigawatts of installed capacity. And this, frankly, caught by surprise our, let's say, decision makers in the energy policy domain, and the ministry, the regulator, and many others, because they didn't think that the prosumers would develop so fast and to this extent. So in a way, I would say that Romania is not quite prepared to deal with this phenomenal increase in the number of prosumers, which has diminished, yes, the electricity consumed from the grid and delivered through the grid. Another observation that I find interesting is the fact that I sense a change of rhetoric and tune with respect to, let's say, OMV Petrom, who in 2016 was saying how they will extract the natural gas and they will ship it to Austria, to Baumgarten. That was what they wanted to do with this natural gas. But now I see in the public messaging coming from this company the fact that they say that we will deliver this natural gas first and foremost, will, to address the natural gas demand of Republic of Moldova. So here finally a change of tune and a reprioritization, which is much welcomed in the sense that they start putting the neighboring countries first in terms of supply of this natural gas, not shipping it as fast as possible to Austria. So this is a good development, I think. What else would I want to add? And another thing that we at TROIEC are looking at and have been looking at in the past couple of months are ways in which we're thinking about the energy system, specifically looking at what is going on in real time in Ukraine. And I'm referring to, again, the resumption of this relentless attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, what is being hit, how hard it's been hit, and the effect it has on the country and on the population, on the residential consumption. And this prompts the question and the thinking in Romania, which is a neighboring country, as to how can we better strengthen our energy system and think of this energy system when we build it so it's resilient and it resists not only during peacetime, but so that it works and so that it has a higher chance of survival, let's say, also during wartime. So this is a new addition to the way we currently think in Romania about energy infrastructure. To just add to something that Mr. Neikov said at the beginning when he referenced to Ukraine and Moldova and the fact that they have open negotiations to join the EU, I also am very happy to see this development. And these are two countries that are very close to my heart specifically. And I think they are fast, and Romania has a significant role to play in integrating with both of these two countries on the energy front, which will result in an increased energy security in our area. Finally, and as a final thought, I would say that I'm happy to sense and to see Romania finally stepping up in the way it thinks, it approaches its documents, energy policy documents. It articulates a much clearer, let's say, responsibility that it's willing to take for Republic of Moldova, which was not the case up until this moment. They were talking about cooperation, joint projects, but right now I see a much more willingness within Romania, on the Romanian side, to take all the steps necessary so that Romania covers all the energy needs also of the Republic of Moldova, if not in the next 2 or 3 years, at least by 2030. So that's this intention to think not only for Romania and Romania's problems, but to think also for Moldova's problems. So it's a package deal, Romania and Moldova, in terms of how they started approaching and thinking the energy infrastructure. That's it from my side for now, but I'm happy to stay for questions in the second part of the panel. I can't hear.
An admirably concise description of what role Romania is doing, and for what was clearly a statement from your heart as well as your head concerning the cooperation between Romania, Moldova and Ukraine. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Yedigal Yergudin from Turkey, former advisor and coordinator of economic and environmental affairs at the OSCE in Vienna. Over to you.
Chairman Stamboulis, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I will not lecture you quite significant things. Just I want to highlight some bullet points that we didn't touch last year. Last year we discussed natural gas supply from Caspian for supply security, additional LNG supply, additional gas from Iraq, and so on. And today I want to bring to your attention the importance of more indigenous production from the region. And I'm sure the colleagues from those countries will also make their remarks on this regard, that we can learn more. Is Western Black Sea becoming a new gas bonanza? We heard Ms. Kusilo about the gas will flow to Moldova instead of to Austria. Certainly somebody need to pay for it. So OMV Petrom will not send it for free. But it's good news that the first gas will flow 2027. And OMV Petrom is planning to produce 100 BCM cumulative of natural gas. On the Turkish side, this was a virgin exploration project, Sakarya deep sea field. At the same time, exploration, production, and development are ongoing in this new field. First gas we received in 2023, and hopefully end of this decade, 14 BCM natural gas production from Sakarya gas field will be available. And here, from the Bulgarian side, I don't have no news about the Han Asparuh development or exploration, but in the very south, was it here? Very southwest part of the Sakarya field, here a new gas exploration drilling is taking place, so it may also give some more hints. So this is the Black Sea offshore Sakarya field. In the late 90s, early 20, sorry, again I made this failure. I will not touch it. There was a sub-basin here in shallow waters near the coast, and there was some 10 years production of yearly, say, 180 million cubic meters per year, and it is still a production, a development taking place to produce a similar volume in the coming years. But the first well drilled here in the Sakarya field was the Tuna-1 well in Pliocene and Miocene sandstones at 2,200 meter water depth. And the first discovery was made in July 2020 with 320 BCM reserves at a depth of 4,525 meters. And additional discoveries followed in this basin in October 2020, June 21, December 22. And as I mentioned before, the 25th drilling is taking place on May 23rd. It started here in this area, close to Han Asparuh field. So this is a good sign for indigenous supply for the region. This is how the field looks like, but the most lucky part of it was the Turkish Petroleum contracted very early in October 21. Awarded the APCI contract, and those days there was not much exploration, and immediately afterwards, when the war in Ukraine started, the hydrocarbon exploration boomed, and nowadays it's very difficult to get those contracts. You will get it certainly, but the mobilization of the equipment takes much longer. So here first gas supply took place in 2023, and right after that the second phase development, the APCI contract has been signed, and this year in May an extension to the phase 2 contract has been made to include the installation of a newly bought floating production unit of the Turkish Petroleum. And as I mentioned, plateau production is target is at the end of this decade about 40 million cubic meter per day. So recent production level is 5 million cubic meters per day in as of May this year. So it's behind the program. So there are some technical difficulties delaying the process. I think another important issue is the renewables deployment in the region. It's amazing how fast the renewables electricity generation from renewables is developing in Southeast Europe. Very large capacities has been installed in Greece, Romania, and Turkey, but electricity transmission and interconnection infrastructure need to be reinforced. Otherwise, we will have the same stories like some 15 years ago in Germany along its eastern border, when it's too much sunshine or too strong winds, then there will be difficulty to say manage the electricity production and transmission. So Turkey last year reached 107,000 megawatt installed capacity. In this regard, we see here lila color, the renewables, solar, wind and geothermal reached 25,000 megawatts installed capacity and reached nearly this green line. This is natural gas. And soon we expect that solar, wind and geothermal can catch the hydropower capacity. A development that I don't like, the installed capacity of natural gas is reducing. So it happened in some other countries. Renewables are replacing, instead of replacing coal, it's replacing natural gas, because natural gas was very expensive during the last years. As a transition fuel, this is critical. Sorry. So this is how Turkey sees the development of renewables. We want to have 53,000 megawatt solar installed in 2035 and about 30,000 megawatt wind installed in the same year. And so we need to invest every year in 5,000 megawatt additional wind and solar. Who would expect 10 years ago that nuclear would be as solid part of the energy security in Europe. And a lot of countries very critical of nuclear energy are re-evaluating their position now. So we heard before nearly including Slovakia, Croatia, Hungary, the countries of the region are promoting nuclear energy, and we hear that Bulgaria is choose the Westinghouse technology to build two new units in Kozloduy, and Romania decided for two new Candu 6 units to be built, and promoting also US technology for small modular reactors. In case of Turkey, we have a very diversified portfolio. So next to the Akkuyu project, where it's under construction, two other projects are in discussion: Sinop at the central Black Sea coast, and İğneada near the Bulgarian border at the Black Sea coast, and the small modular reactor projects. So we see a sketch of the Akkuyu construction site here, and it is not easy to build such a nuclear infrastructure, and the commissioning stage for the first unit started already this year, and we hope the first electricity can be delivered to the network sometime beginning of the next year. And for the other two projects, each with 4 units, ongoing negotiations are taking place with Russian Federation, China, and South Korea. And for small modular reactor projects with UK, USA, and France. So thank you very much, and I would be happy to hear your comments or your questions.
Yudiko, thank you very much indeed for a very good tour d'horizon of Turkish, Romanian, and Bulgarian into the parallel way in which they are developing gas, nuclear, and the need to improve electricity and their interconnections. Much appreciated. Thanks very much indeed. Our next speaker is Christos Dimas, who is the chief of IENE's Geopolitics and Energy Committee, an old friend, and who is been working on the geopolitics of energy, including my own area of interest, the Caspian, for a good long time. Christos, over to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you indeed. I will try to depict some characteristics of the energy security, and I will try to analyze some of them. In order to understand the energy security status of Southeast Europe, we shall take into account the energy status in the region, energy sources, supply routes, networks, flexibility, the European Central Energy Policy affecting the region, the climate crisis, new needs, the role of new technologies and that of renewables, the geopolitical tensions, and the oil and gas role. Regarding the status of the region's energy sector, we can notice the relatively high dependence of the majority of the countries on solid fuels, mostly used for power generation, the high dependence on the imported oil and gas, the lack of adequate gas supply routes and interconnections, and the slower than anticipated penetration of renewables and slow progress on energy efficiency improvement. The large amount of indigenous coal and lignite deposits provide relatively cheap energy and easily accessible for most countries of the region, and these are seen by European Commission as preventing a secure move towards greater decarbonization. So we have here a major policy challenge which both Southeast governments and EU will have to address. Certainly, there are several countries in the region making a good effort by developing in parallel renewables and other carbon-free resources, such as nuclear power, but at the same time are determined to exhaust their cheap coal lignite deposits. The European Central Energy Policy is mainly related with the energy transition and consequently the decarbonization policies. Without a doubt, EU needs to move rightly towards green energy and energy transition, and why not EU to become a world leader in this area with a lot of advantages and gains for Europe itself on energy, geopolitical and economical fronts. But at the same time, and for the long transition period, EU must protect the European industry, the European agriculture, the European economy, and the European society in general. Under the new European regulation, the Clean Energy for All Europeans, each European member state is required to produce an integrated national energy and low economic growth, or even without growth at all. Energy prices depending on the outcome of the wars, increasing pressure to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. European industry producers are struggling to adapt. The low economic growth in Europe under the pressure of climate crisis, of the higher military expenses due to the existing wars and due to the general geopolitical instability, of the expenses of the energy transition, of the public debt and the demographic issue, this low economic growth will probably continue, and hence the European economy will face difficulties. Of course, there will be a positive exception regarding the new technologies and especially the artificial intelligence, which is going to push the economy. But I don't think that this is going to counterbalance the needed expenses from what I said before. The energy prices will remain a key challenge, and the decarbonization process based on the upcoming carbon border adjustment mechanism will not achieve what it is designed to achieve, as pointed out by European Heavy Industry Association. Under these circumstances, the European producers will face difficulties in achieving competitiveness, and even more, some governments and international organizations are fighting necessary to prioritize energy security over green transition. To this end, a more realistic approach to decarbonization should be adopted by EU, in contrast with the given emphasis to an aggressive decarbonization program. The results of the recent European elections possibly promise such an adjustment. On the other hand, the pandemic and the two wars crises have proven that, first, the supply dependencies must be diversified, and second, the fossil fuels will be necessary to bridge transition to green energy. Indeed, the oil and gas industry is a critical component of the global energy mix, accounting for approximately 60% of the world's energy consumption today. Oil is the most widely used fuel in the world, accounting for around 33% of the global energy consumption. It is used in a variety of industries, including transportation, heating and cooling, and electricity generation. Gas is also an important fuel, accounting for around 24% of the world's energy consumption. It is used primarily for electric generation and heating, but also in transportation and industrial processes. According to the ExxonMobil's global outlook, oil and natural gas are still projected to meet more than half, 54%, of the world's energy needs in 2050. Especially natural gas use is projected to increase by more than 20% by 2050. Given its utility as a reliable and lower emission source of fuel for electricity generation, hydrogen production, and heating for both industrial processes and buildings. Based also on BP's estimates, oil demand declines over the outlook, driven by falling use in road transport. Even so, oil will continue to play a major role in the global energy system for the next 15 to 20 years. The prospects for natural gas depend on the speed of the energy transition, with increasing demand in emerging economies as they grow and industrialize. Analyzing the market trends, we understand that large companies, be careful on that, the non-governmental ones do not see an end to oil demand anytime in the near future. To this end, both Chevron and ExxonMobil are proceeding to acquire oil and gas companies, paying tens of billions of dollars today. Continued demand for oil and gas, despite growing momentum for clean energy, is due to population growth around the globe, and in particular due to growth in population ascending the socio-economic ladder in Africa, Asia, and to some extent Latin America. Certainly, the oil and gas industry faces significant challenges, we know that, in terms of environmental concerns related to greenhouse gas emissions. The industry is exploring ways to reduce its environmental impact through technological innovation, including carbon capture and storage, and improvements in energy efficiency. Another challenge for the industry is the volatility of energy prices. The price of oil in particular can fluctuate significantly due to factors such as geopolitical tensions, production levels, and global demand. On the other hand, in October, I have to move. So, clean energy projects are facing headwinds in some markets from cost inflation, supply chain bottlenecks, higher borrowing costs, and shortage of grids and storage infrastructure. Especially in emerging economies marked by population and economic expansion, the adoption of low-carbon energy sources may be prohibitively expensive. So, taking all the above into account, we certainly need to move steadily and decisively towards clean energy. But to accommodate energy needs and climate goals, we'll need all forms of energy, more renewables, natural gas, and oil, alongside more carbon capture, more energy efficiency, and more innovation. We need solutions that ensure intermittent renewables are supported with a reliable base load of power that is still low emitting. And as G0 pointed out, learning to say yes to all forms of energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christos, and thank you very much for pointing to the need for innovation. I believe that our final speaker, Nicholas Liapas of Action on Verve, is going to talk on alternative fuels and the way in which we can see innovation in the way in which different fuels are put to use. So over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you. I think it's here. Thank you very much. So we're really in a transition period, but what we cannot see is the way that we'll do this transition, and if we have the availability in all this renewable fuel that we need, apart from renewable electricity, and if we have the infrastructure to accommodate that in order to meet the roadmap that we have, especially from the European Union. So there is really these two big problems. Because when we talk about renewable fuels, We started some years ago with biofuels, but now we see that we have found the limit with first generation biofuels. Even if we can find products and feedstock, mostly we can see that then it's not sustainable. This feedstock is not sustainable anymore. And even the European Union has put an end on that and a ceiling that we cannot exceed, about 1.5% of the consumption, and this will go on. So we forget about biodiesel, first generation biodiesel and bioethanol, no more than we have right now in our fuel. So what will be the rest of it? Okay, we talk about cars, private cars, and we say about electrification. We don't see this going very fast as we would like, let's say, to do it, mainly because of the price of the cars, of the maturity in the batteries technology, and of course in all the infrastructure needed. Especially in Greece, we have very big problems with expanding, let's say, the electric cars fleet, because it's really difficult to take all the permits needed, for example, to install chargers, electric chargers for the cars in the gasoline stations, which is something quite difficult. Of course, the cost is huge for installing a charger, and you cannot take your money back because there is no fleet. So chicken and egg chicken. So this is a big problem with the electrification of cars. For big vehicles, for heavy-duty vehicles, we say, okay, we don't have a solution right now. Maybe LNG as a bridge fuel, but we cannot see the biogas for that. We talked about now 10 years about the LNG being a bridge fuel for moving out to renewable forms of energy. But as a matter of fact, I cannot see the way, especially in Greece, that we can have biogas to substitute all this LNG. And so we don't have heavy-duty vehicles with LNG at the moment. We don't have gasoline stations, supply stations. I know that, for example, my former company, Linol, together with Blue Grid, will build one, is building one, but the fleet is not there at the moment. So for heavy-duty vehicles, we see the future in hydrogen, but is really the future in hydrogen? I mean, hydrogen, we know that it's quite expensive. We know also if it's not used in the industry as an industrial fuel, I mean, it's not worth it to produce just for the heavy-duty vehicles, and it's really hard difficult to transport it, to store it. It's dangerous, and also we saw from one of our esteemed speakers before that it's a very dangerous greenhouse gas. I mean, its greenhouse gas potential, it's very high, much higher than carbon dioxide, and this is something that happens with natural gas as well. So, I mean, we are trying to substitute the conventional fuel, and we must do it in an urgent way because we see the results of the greenhouse gas effects, but we don't have mature technologies for this special, let's say, applications. Okay, so we must move faster to electricity. This is a very good idea, and we can see it, for example, also in the shipping industry and the marine fuels. We don't have LNG in adequate quantities, or we don't have any in South, let's say in South Europe and in the Southeastern Mediterranean. We don't have the infrastructure for LNG, for bunkering LNG in adequate quantities, but don't have the fleet as well. But we know that LNG is also dangerous for the environment. So we're talking about cold ironing. So we need electricity, but we need green electricity for that. There's no meaning of that. So we have two problems with green electricity in shipping, in marine fuels as well. So we don't have enough green electricity, and we don't have any infrastructure capable to support all the fleet, especially for passenger vessels or for cruise vessels, etc. So it is a big problem to find all this green electricity. How can we do it? We have, I think we reached the ceiling with photovoltaics, and we have a very big, let's say, movement of people that don't want any windmills in their near them. I mean, in their mountains, etc. So I think that we must have another steady form of energy, more steady than photovoltaic, and more with a steady, let's say, a steady supply of energy than photovoltaics and wind. We don't have batteries. We don't have buffers for electricity. So we need, at the moment, natural gas. But natural gas is conventional. We don't want that. We see that even it will be banned from heating diesels, from heating houses. So what we're going to do? Maybe what we saw from our friends from Turkey, nuclear is a solution. I know that in Greece we were always, since I was a student, I mean in the National Technical University of Athens, that we were opponent to that. We didn't want any nuclear power in Greece. But what is the alternative? I mean, from that, we must keep on conventional fuels. We have other resources that we haven't explored yet. For example, I'm very fond of plastic waste pyrolysis oil, something that I don't hear it very much because there are huge quantities of that. I mean, not of pyrolysis oil, but of plastic waste. Our civilization is very dependent on plastic, heavy dependent on plastic, and I think that this will happen in the future as well. And to produce a fuel from that is really a very good alternative, a very good solution for recycling. And especially if we consider that it's a very good fuel for shipping, for example. But we don't do anything about that at the moment. We don't consider about that. And there are huge quantities of that. So what I wanted to conclude is that in general, we have, let's say, legislation. We have all this roadmap to 2050 and full decarbonization in every sector, especially in the European Union. But I think that at the moment, we don't have any mature solutions to make this mass substitution, let's say, of conventional fuel. And Mr. Dimas said before that we'll see oil in the future, we'll have oil in the future, but this will not help us. And it will not help us to substitute conventional fuels that have their dangers and their risks, but at least we know them. With new fuels, we don't know them. For example, in shipping, what we say that we must substitute heavy fuel oil with ammonia. Ammonia, unfortunately, is very toxic, is very dangerous, and also to produce it you need huge quantities of green electricity that we don't have it, and also you will have leakages of ammonia, which is problem, and also leakages from hydrogen, which is problem. So we must find firstly the mature solutions, and maybe do not waste any solution as the plastic pyrolysis oil or new technology, nuclear, the same for shipping as well. So I mean that we need feedstock, infrastructure, and we need to reconsider technologies that until now we didn't consider them at all. Thank you.
Nicholas, thank you very much. Indeed, I need to thank all the members of the panel for being so concise, because, Kostis, may I ask you, can we have 5 minutes for questions? Because we have been very brief here. So thank you very much. So can we have some questions? And can you, first question here from the professor from Pristina. Yeah. Can you keep it short, please?
Depending how much substance you want. Yeah, of course. I get the microphone.
Where's the microphone coming?
Yeah. Okay, well, I had, if you allow me a couple of observations. First of all, I would like to commend all the speakers, of course, on the very interesting presentations. Regarding the presentation by Mr. Slavko Neko, I think it's very important to emphasize the issue that Western Balkan countries, the region, ought to be included as soon as possible because of a number of reasons, including political, economic security of energy and all of it. It's very important to have them as they are applying, rather than including or considering for inclusion Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, which are basically.
Can you pose it as a question quickly?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be in the European region, okay, and get these Western Balkan included, instead of getting into countries which are in delicate, volatile situations, the one that we mentioned. And of course it's geopolitics, but then it can be more pragmatic, can be more moderate, it's less dangerous, and more result-oriented. I would like also to mention and to support very much the issues that Mr. Gillette, if I got the name properly, mentioned. The name of the game in here is security of energy, energy security, energy affordability, and energy sustainability. We need a practical way to approach it, not so ideologically in principle, without pragmatic considerations.
I'm going to cut you off because we do need to have, we've got other people who want to ask questions, and we've
Okay.
only got three
Let me
minutes
ask,
left. So thank you very much
let me
indeed
just
for your
ask the
contribution.
question then.
I know it's an observation. Okay,
No,
ask the
not a
question quickly.
Okay. Okay. We need a bit of discussion, but okay, I mean, it's the way you moderate it. It's the question of that was raised by a gentleman from Greece of the necessity of increasing the production of electrical energy, irrespective of whether it's green or whatever, just for inclusion, as one of the speakers said, the electrical vehicle. Does anybody have an idea how
Okay.
much?
Do you want to respond on that?
The question is.
Yeah, no, we've got the question.
No, you did
We
not
know
ask
what it is.
The
Yes.
question. The question was about to be posed. Does one have any idea as to how much needs to be the electrical energy production in order to transition to electrical vehicles, as it is planned and mandated? Let's say, for example, in the U.S., 280 million electric vehicles.
Well, as a matter of fact,
Time for an answer.
just judging from Greece, I think we need more than 20% more electricity, or 30% just for the private vehicles. Because, the calorific value of gasoline and diesel is quite big, so we need huge quantities.
Thank you very much indeed. We have a question over here. Can we have the microphone over? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, by concluding this session, I came to the understanding that this is not an energy security session, but an energy insecurity one. One is was telling, Mr. Dimas was telling that by 2050, 24% will be oil and gas still. What about the 54% by 2050? Okay, that means what about the 1.5 degrees threshold set by Paris Agreement? According to what they say, that's going to be plus 5%, which is going to be a hell in the whole Earth. So that's the one question. The second one is why we consider nuclear as energy security the moment that, forget about the CO2, for security. The substance is coming, oil and gas from Russia, whatever, and then we'll change master and we're going to the United States and we'll buy it from them of somebody else, because Greece, we don't have that uranium, or we don't have quantities enough.
Can I just make
Where
a
is the
point that
security?
you're quite right to raise the question of nuclear, because that's going to be addressed tomorrow. We've got a session on the subject. But, and it's here. So have we got any more questions coming up here? So, right. So can I thank the panelists very, very much indeed. We have managed to complete almost in time. It is always tight. It's always difficult to get the panelists to be concise, and indeed, sometimes it's time for the moderator himself to shut up. So thank you very much indeed.